So now we're recording. So I'll go back over that real quick. So anyway, you start with a line drawing, and it will show you. You also see that when you're right at that intersect, you also get another little yellow square there that shows you that you're at a perpendicular intersect. So all of these are like little indicators that you'll get when you're drawing that lets you know that you just came up to a line. It will kind of snap to it. And it also lets you draw 90-degree angles and things like that a lot easier. So in this case, we'll start out, we'll draw a line. All right, so here's our line. To get, and then it will, like most programs that will continue drawing that line, you can right click to get off of it, or you can just push escape. Either way will get you out of that line. So right here we have a line. It doesn't have any dimensions. So if we go up to this tab up here that says Smart Dimensions, you click on that. You click on your line and you pull down. Come on, line. And sometimes things are a pain in the butt. There we go. I had to end up pushing escape and then click on it again. Sometimes it gets stuck into like little weird loops. You know, like all software, it's not always 100%. So you click on it, you drag down, and we get this value here. It's 109.2, right? So we're just going to click again, and then this little dialog box pops up. And for whatever length you want to make your line, and I have everything in metric right now, and I think I'll probably keep it that way. You know, if we get to the point where we want to go into standard units, we can. Metric's just really nice as far as something like this goes, because we can just, you know, do decimal point values and things like that. So it just makes it a little bit easier for this. But if you were doing it in standard, you just change your unit values so that they're, you know, US standard unit values, and you get inches, you know, feet, yards, all of that. So let's just keep it a metric. We'll go 100 millimeters, right? And so just to do that, all you do is you just type in 100 and then you push enter. All right, so that gave us that length right now is 100, okay? So with that, we can go here and let's draw another line. So if we're drawing another line, we can go back to this origin point, right? And we can draw it up, and let's go at an angle, okay? So if we go at an angle, we can see that we don't have that little yellow square, right? Well, this is a 90-degree angle, but you know what I mean. So we're at a non-90-degree angle here. And we'll click again. That gives us our point, and we push escape, okay? So let's give that a smart dimension of 100 as well. So we click on the line, we pull off, and we say 100, and enter, okay? Now, what we can do is we can click OK over here. We can, so if you saw that I just clicked on that checkbox, and essentially that just gives this line its value. So now that we're here, we can click on Smart Dimensions again. So Smart Dimensions gives you length, but you can also do angles with it. So if you're on Smart Dimensions, you can click on this line here, and then go down and click on this line, and then pull out. And as soon as you do that, you see it gives you an angle in between those two lines. So let's make that angle 60, all right? And we say enter. And it changes your angle to 60 there. So now we have two equal lines and a 60-degree angle. If we were to go here, pick another line, go from here down to here, and click and escape, then we know that this line is also 100. Now, what you'll see is that that line shows up in blue, and all these other lines are in black, and that's because we haven't defined that line yet. So if we go to our Smart Dimensions again, we click on that line, we pull off, it knows it's 100, right? Because it has to be, because we gave an angle of 60, and we have two other 100 millimeter long lines. So that means we're dealing with an isosceles triangle, so it knows it has to be 100. But what you can do is you can use this as make this dimension driven, which means that if I change any of these other lengths here or this angle, it will change that length. Or you can make that dimension driving, which means that if you change this length, it will change the angles and the other sides. But we're just going to keep it as a dimension that's driven. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we just say okay. So yeah, that one's driven by all the other values. So if we were to change any of these other values, it would change that value there too. All right, so that's just some basic stuff. We also know we can also go to, like, say, smart dimensions here. We could click on this line and click on this. Yeah, let me do it. And say okay. Smart dimensions. Click on this line and then click on this line, and see it automatically knows that that's a 60-degree angle. And also comes up with, do you want to have it driven or not? So, all right. So that's angles and lines. Pretty simple. The smart dimensions thing, what you got to remember is that you draw your line, get out of it, then you click smart dimensions, click on the outside line that you drew and pull away from it, and it will pop up with what your dimension is. So from there, let's look at circles. So we have two options for circles. We have this perimeter circle and we have a center point circle. So we're going to start with the center point circle. We'll go back to our origin here. We'll pull this out, right? Click the button. That gives us that. And then we can go over here. We'll go to Smart Dimensions, click on the line, pull away from it. And let's make that 25. Say enter. All right. So that's one way to draw a circle, okay? And we gave it our diameter, and it has an origin point and all of that. So your basic circle. Now the other way you can draw a circle is, say you want to have a circle that's inside of this triangle. So you go over here and you can draw this perimeter circle. When you draw a perimeter circle, you basically click on 3 points on your lines, and it will draw a circle that goes inside of that perimeter. Does that make sense? So sometimes this is handy when you're like if you're sketching things up and you want to draw a circle inside a perimeter inside a triangle, but also inside of a square, things like that. Instead of trying to find the exact center of that triangle and then drawing your line out and having it meet the edge, which you could do, because you could just draw a center point from here and bring it over, and as soon as it touched this line, it would give you that circle. But this lets you do that without going into that extra step of finding the center point of your circle or of your triangle. So everybody follow along with that?
So far, so good.
Okay. Like I said, this is super basic. This is 2D drawing, and something that you could do with most drawing programs. So it's this is just the beginning of where you get into the power of what this program can do. So with that in mind, let us kind of pull over to the side here a little bit. So to move back and forth like this, what you do is you push Control and then hold your scroll wheel down, and you can slide side to side. So and to zoom in and out, you roll your scroll wheel. That's similar to most programs have that as a function. And wherever your cursor's at, that's where it's going to center your zoom around. So for as far as navigating, when you're in a 3D model, you push your cursor in, and if you're not holding the Control button, you can move it and it will rotate your model in 3D space. So we'll look at that in a little bit when we get to that side of things. So over here, we can do a thing called center lines. So we're just going to draw some reference center lines, okay? And you'll notice that as I move up and down across here, we've got this point here, and we've got multiple points on our drawing that are pertinent, and you get this little dotted blue line. So that's really nice if you're trying to reference, if you're drawing something kind of big and you're trying to reference to, hey, am I lined up with, say, the top of this triangle here? It lets you know that you are by giving you those little points. So let's go over here. We'll draw a horizontal center line. All right. And let's make that, say, escape. And we'll go smart dimensions. We'll grab it, we'll drop down. Let's make that 250. Okay. Not that that 250 really matters, but we'll make it that. And then we'll go over here, we'll do two more center lines, all right? So we'll do a center line here. And you remember how I said if you pull up and you're perpendicular, you get that yellow cursor? Well, when you're doing center lines, you also get this grid that pops up where it shows you that you're actually perpendicular along the lines. So we'll draw one up and we'll draw one down a little bit. Say escape. And then we'll do the same thing over here. I'm sorry if you can hear my dogs barking in the background. That is the, and see, so I want these reference lines, say I want them to be the same height. As soon as I get to where it's even with that point, it gives me a point that is the same height. And same thing when I come down here. All right. So we have some reference lines drawn, all right? So let's go back and we'll draw a few circles here. So we can start our circle on this point here. We'll drag it out and click there. And you'll notice here that you actually have a radius value for it here. You can either use that, or if you click off of it and do your smart dimensions, you can click here. And so the difference in that is that it shows you what your radius is for it instead of your diameter. So you just want to keep that in mind, that if you're using that function and the parameters there, and you're going to enter in directly to there, that value is your radius. So let's click off, and we'll call this 160. And then we'll go here and we'll draw another circle and click OK. And so in here, let's make its diameter 40, so its radius is going to be 20. Okay, and 20. That makes sense to everybody? So with that in mind, we've got these two circles, and then we can go up here to our line tool, and we've got these reference points here on the top of the circle. And what you would imagine here, say maybe you're looking at drawing a pulley system in, on a, I don't know, for whatever you're drawing. Say you're modeling an engine and you want to model out the pulley system. You can get your top point of your pulley here, your tangent, and you pull over, and you'll notice that you get a value here that shows that line. So instead of just going to the point here, that point is your perpendicular between everything, you can actually pull your line past a little bit, and it will give you a tangent. That's at the circle with the line right across it, right? And you can click on that. And then we push escape. And then we can go over here. You got to click line again. For whatever reason, and like I said, every software has its quirks. This one makes it basically defaults you back and doesn't go to the tool you were just using, which is a little annoying. So, and we can click there so that we're tangent. All right. So with that in mind, we basically just drew what our pulley would look like, right? So, but we have some little features here that if we zoom in, we roll the other direction to zoom in, we see that we have this feature that runs off of here, right? So to do that, if we want to clean this up so that we have this tangent drawn, we can go to trim entities, and we can go trim to closest intersect. So that's going to bring us back to this closest intersect line there. So if we go like that and we trim it, say it brings it back to your closest intersect. And then if we zoom out and zoom back in over here, we can do the same thing over here. So that just cleans up that drawing a little bit. Now, say we wanted to make this not into a pulley system, but into kind of this weird oblong, say we're putting like we're designing a crank handle onto something, and we want that crank handle to have a smaller diameter out at this end. Well, in that case, what we can do is we can use the same trim entity program, right? Or idea, we could go here, we can trim that line out there, and that line out there, and this line here, and this line here. And now we have this object. Now, for whatever reason, say that's a cover over your top of your pulleys or whatever, you can do that by drawing your two diameter circles, connecting them, and then trimming things out. There's some other features here in your trimming that you have this one called power trim. Power trim's interesting in that, say we don't want these reference lines anymore, we can take it and anything that the power trim crosses over, it will delete them. So we can go like that, and that deletes all of those. There's and the back button up here just brings that back. I just wanted to keep it there. And what you're seeing, these two lines that go out here, if you remember, those are just those are my dimension lines. So it won't delete your dimension lines, but any of your drawn lines, it will delete out of there. So, but what happens if we want to, there's some other trim entity features here as well too. So say you had, I need to draw another thing over here. So let's control, no, back, that was the wrong button. So we have some lines over here. I'm gonna just draw some quick lines. We'll go to there and say escape. So if we trim entities, we can do this corner one. The corner one's kind of interesting because what it will do is, say you were drawing and you overlapped a little bit and you want it to trim something so that you didn't have these kind of shaggy ends on your corner. You can do your corner one where you pick your points. And of course I drew multiple lines in there. Let's see if it will do it. Hold on a second. The way I drew that is a problem. So let me go back. Okay. So let me select here and go past. Okay. And we'll say escape. All right. So we go to trim entities. We do this corner trim. We can pick a line here and a line here. And see, it takes those other pieces off. So what it does is it uses the lines you picked as your lines for your corner. So you're not picking the lines you want to delete. You're picking the lines you want to save. Another feature that is in here is this one where you can trim stuff that's inside of two features. So say we draw a line down here, and we'll draw a handful of lines across here. Let's escape. We can go trim entity. And we can trim away inside. And what this does is you select your two sides, right? And then you can trim what's inside of there. Or if you want it to trim a bunch of things that are inside of there, you can draw a box. Why are you not letting me there? And it will trim everything that you touched inside of it. So kind of a nice feature for cleaning stuff up as well. And then they have the same thing, the trim away on the outside. It's just exactly the opposite of what that last feature was. So those trim functions are kind of nice. So, all right. So everybody follow along with that. Those are some just basic drawing features of what this thing can do. Everybody okay so far? I take the silence to be a yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, and like I said, this will be so much easier. Okay, and like I said, I'll record this and I'll post it up and I'll send you guys a link to the post, so that you can maybe have this going in the background and you can try to do these things as well, in the software. I don't imagine that you guys are trying to do that right now as I talk. So some of this, a lot of this is just going to be practice. And I know that this sounds basic, but really you just get it. And that's what the assignments are going to be for this one is, for this week, is just basic 2D drawings where I'll have you replicate some stuff. And they'll just be basic shapes, triangles, oblongs and stuff like that. And, just practice with these tools. Because then once you get this down, going to the next step where you start to render stuff in 3D becomes that much easier. So especially really the one that you want to focus on is that Smart Dimensions tool. That one's the one that you're going to use a lot. So for example, on that, let's look at if we were, we'll pull up here. And I know I'm using all of the same. I do believe my headset might be dying here, so hold on a second. All right. Can you guys still hear me? Let me see here. I might have you guys turned way down.
Yeah.
All right, I had you guys turned down. Am I getting an echo on your side? Oh.
Sounds negative.
All right, I just got my final student. Hello, Joe. All right, so I'm going to scroll out here a little bit. I'm doing this all on one page, but I mean, obviously, if you were working on multiple parts, you probably wouldn't have them just scattered out across the page like this. But for this part of it, this is fine. And honestly, for the assignment that you guys turned into me, I don't mind if it's all just in one file. That actually makes it a little bit easier for this first assignment. As we start building parts and things like that, those parts would probably be individual parts as we bring it together. So with that in mind, the Smart Dimensions tool, let's go through and we'll just do a basic stair step, okay? So, and this will be something that I'll actually have you guys do. So if you follow along with this, it will be a little bit easier. And when you're first drawing it, don't worry about what your dimensions are. So I know you can see them there and you could estimate and get them close, but it doesn't really matter right away. Let's click on that. All right, we'll say escape. Now, actually, let me back up. I don't like that. this would be easier if I do it clean and nice the first time. Because like I said, when you're drawing stuff, you'll see where that blue dotted line is, and that tells you that you're perpendicular. So click there, and then we'll go across there. That closes it all in. All right. So we've got that. If we go up to the Smart Dimensions tool, we can click on these and click on this and we'll drop it down. Let's make this 250, okay? That stretches everything out. Now you'll notice that because we defined that one line, the other lines moved. Because the other lines aren't defined, it stretches stuff a little bit. So it basically will stretch all of your undefined lines to match what you have as a defined line. So we know that this total length is 250, right? So if we make this line here 50, it's going to draw in scale to this line here, right? And then we make this line here, say 75. Then this line will already have a value of 125. And this is where it comes up with that, hey, make this dimension driven or leave the dimension driving. We'll leave it as a driven dimension, all right? And then we get the same thing if we're defining our dimensions on these. So let's make this one 50 as well. And we'll see it from the other direction if we come on now, Smart Dimensions. We'll make this one 75. And now you see that we have this little tiny line here that we're going to have to zoom in on. Actually, let's zoom out and we'll make this line here to 200. And by doing that, it will define this line here as 75. And we say, okay. And now we have this entire thing is a defined object. So all of its lengths are known. And we can click back here, and that piece is defined now. So if we double click on it again, it opens it back up. It shows you all your dimensions. And you can make it so those dimensions show up either way. If it's closed out or if you're in there. So like I said, when you're doing your Smart Dimensions, basically all you do is you just click on the line once and then pull away from it. Unless you're doing something like an angle, remember like where we talked about when you were doing angles, if you had your two lines, don't do that. If you had your two lines, you do your Smart Dimension, you would click on that line and then you click on that line and then that opens up your angle dimension. All right, so I know our classes are normally scheduled for being a little bit longer. And I think as we get into stuff that's a little bit more complicated, they'll probably stretch out a little bit. So if it works with everybody, for starters, the 6 o'clock today work for everybody for their schedule.
Yeah, it worked for me.
Works for me too.
That's good for me.
Yeah, it worked for me too. Okay. So if that's a lot of people, mostly everybody. So if it doesn't work, you guys can send me an email or whatever, but I'd like to know today. If we can get it to work, we'll plan on starting at 6. If we need to go past that, let's plan on this class in theory running from 6 until 8, just so you kind of have that block set aside. Sometimes it'll be a bit shorter, like tonight's going to be, and sometimes it'll be a little bit longer, especially as we start to get into more complicated concepts. And there are some, like once you start getting into the gears and how the gears mesh up and things like that, some of that's going to take a little bit longer to demonstrate and show. And also what we can do is once everybody's got the software on their computers, you can also share your screen. So we might do a little bit of back and forth where people are trying things and showing it to the group, and we can talk about it a little bit. Like I said, this is it's kind of a new format for me as far as teaching online as well. So we're gonna have to play it a little bit by ear, but hopefully by the time we're done with this, you guys will at least have the basics on how to use the software, and you'll know how to do at least, you'll know how to do enough to get yourself into trouble, essentially, which is where you kind of want to be when you're starting out. So, and from there, you can, we'll get you to the point where you feel comfortable experimenting with how the software works, building your own designs, and, potentially doing the G code on them and doing some 3D printing or something like that from it too. Ideally, that was what I had hoped we would be able to do as a class, is to get a hold of a 3D printer, design a few things, and actually print them out and see your computer design go to something that was actually physical in your hands. I don't think we're going to have that chance this term, but it's kind of the end point of some of this design software. So, like I said, I will send out an assignment. It's going to be very simple. It's going to be basically kind of what we were looking at here today. So it shouldn't take you guys too terribly long. You'll probably have a little bit of struggle in remembering how all the tools work, and just kind of working your way through kind of the idiosyncrasies of the software. But feel free to send me emails and ask me if you have questions. And like I said, I'll clean up the LakerLink page so the assignments match up with what we're actually doing, and we'll go from there. So, does anybody have any other questions?
Oh, I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a specific way we're supposed to save our work and send them?
I think they just save as a single file.
About 10 minutes.
And from there you can just email it to me. That works fine. You don't have to upload it onto LakerLink. So that's actually what I would prefer, is if you just saved them. If for whatever reason you're saving multiple files, do all you guys know how to zip up a folder?
I don't know how to zip a folder, but I bet I can figure it out though.
Okay, if you just basically, if you're in Windows and you right click on the folder, it should have a send to button, and you go send to, and then one of the options will be zip file. And basically it will just it will create a zip file inside of that, just right in the parent folder that you're in. And it lets you take multiple files, zip them up into one folder, and just send them to somebody. So, and that way you're not attaching multiple files. It can just go as one file. If that is problematic for somebody, just let me know and we'll work through it. So, but what I'll do is when I send out the assignment, or when I post the assignment, like I said, I'll send out an email, let you guys know that it's all uploaded to LakerLink, and it will be in the coursework folder. Ignore what's in there right now. I'll clean that all up. But it'll be in the coursework folder, and you guys can just go in there, and I'll have some instructions on what I want you guys to turn into me as your end project, okay? In this case, maybe I might just have you guys print it to PDF or export it to PDF and just send me a PDF of what you've done. When we get to doing stuff in 3D, I'll probably have you guys send me the actual file so that I can go into it in 3D and look at your dimensions and stuff like that. So, but for right now, that's really all I've got. Any other questions? All right. If you guys have any if you have any additional problems installing the software, or if you still run into that same problem you're running into with the serial number, I'll try to get a hold of IT and see if I can figure out what's going on with that. I actually have, I was able to install the software that they're running in their labs on there instead of the student software that you guys are using. So unfortunately, I didn't have to go through the same steps that you guys did to install it on your computer. So I might not be super familiar if there are some small problems in there. So, but yeah, if you guys don't have any other questions, I think we'll call it good at 7. And if you can just plan on some weeks it being a little longer than an hour, and sometimes maybe even closer to 2 hours, and some weeks being about an hour, that will work.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Very excited. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.